shifting. And as a matter of fact now, the rolls have really exploded across the state. And back in the mid-90s, when they put in welfare reform, the rolls in New York State went down about 30% almost overnight because
Yes,
there was so much fraud in the
interestingly
system.
Enough, that is correct, but interesting enough, the rolls went down, but the amount of people that were needed to run the program stayed exactly the same, and yet there was 30% less.
Actually, the old, not too long ago, the figures were out of every 28 cents that went into the fund, about 22 cents, I think, went to the program. Only 8 cents went to the recipient.
There was a huge reduction in people on welfare, over 1 million people, because basically back in the mid-90s, 1 out of every 11 people statewide was on welfare, and 1 out of every 7 in New York City was on welfare, and that was costing the taxpayers a tremendous amount of money.
But
and
again,
now
as
that
I
they've
said,
rolled,
it might have been costing, but at that time, out of every dollar, 10 cents was reaching. By the time it went through, first you had the federal, and the people that ran the program for the federal got their little bit. And that $1, when it finally got to the welfare recipient, they were getting 10 cents on the dollar out of that dollar of taxes.
Well, that's what I was trying to point out. The administration is very heavy.
right, and you have to cut that down. But right now, the welfare rolls have exploded again, and it's costing the taxpayers a lot more money. And I have a deep concern about that because there is a lot of fraud. There was just a case, a couple in Long Island. They had a $500,000 home. They had 3 luxury cars. They owned rental property, and they were on welfare because they don't test the assets anymore to see what assets people have. I mean, you know, that's outrageous, and that makes me very angry that we have senior citizens who are struggling to pay their tax bills and their property tax bills, and you have that kind of abuse of the system. So we have to curb that kind of abuse.
I agree, there are abuses.
Well, thank you, caller.
Like I said, there's all kinds of welfare, and I feel that if you cut the rolls by 30%, and you still need the same amount of people to run the program, there's something wrong there.
I would, I'd have to check on that to see what the actual figures are, but I agree. There should be a reduction in streamlining in government. I totally agree with that.
Thank you, caller.
Okay, thank you. And
send me an envelope. I've got a few $5 bills for you for the Lakeview.
Enjoy the sun, because apparently it's not going to last long.
It's going to be windy.
It's going to snow tonight, they say. Somebody said.
And thank you very much,
Well,
Ms.
thank you,
Johnson.
caller.
Thank you.
Well,
Bye-bye.
your point about the seniors having a tough time is well taken. They've lost 50% of their income in the last 8 years, according to the official figures. And now this year, they didn't receive a penny in their COLA, which they were guaranteed.
For Social
And
Security,
they say,
that's
well,
right, federal.
it's failing. Well, this is money that we work very hard for honestly and put the money into the Social Security system.
That's right.
And now they're taking it away by inflation. So that's how they're knocking us out. And when another 5 or 8 years, we're down to 10% of our actual purchasing power, which we used to have with it. Everybody will be living in their children's basement eating this stuff. This is cat food. During the first Great Depression, seniors ate cat food. That's how they survived.
Well, this is what kills me, because I think there's a lot of wasteful spending, and I can't believe that the federal government did not increase Social Security cost of living. And that's just plain wrong. You look at all this money going out the door. For example, the $200 million that the governor gave again back to welfare for back to school supplies last year, $200 per child. And I asked my school superintendents how much of that went towards school supplies, and you know what? They just laughed, Reed, because it did not go to. Just think what that could do for seniors or the economy or other things. You know, you have to look at how you're spending your money.
Seniors should be carrying cat food cans around in their pocket the way the tea baggers do, because this is how the Congress is treating them. They tell us there's no inflation, so we don't need a COLA. Have you been down to Walmart lately, fella?
Well,
have you looked at your tax
store?
bills?
Right.
The tax bills are rising. Have you looked at your costs for the automobile and the new taxes all around us?
Well, you know, and as I brought up last year in the state budget, they increased your utility taxes. Now, you know, people already have a tough time heating their homes or paying their electricity bills. And, you know, for government to do that is just plain wrong, and that's what we're fighting against, because it seems like there's a disconnect between what Washington and Albany is doing and people's everyday lives and what the impact is.
The seniors have a big handicap. They, at the age of 85, cannot go down and get a job at Walmart stocking the shelves. This is their entire dependent income. This is it. This is all they have. And if they take it away, which they've been doing with inflation rapidly, more and more pages will appear in the newspaper with homes that are up for foreclosure because they can't pay the taxes, they can't pay the maintenance. It's a mess. All right, let's get on to something nice. What's good with it? What's going on over in the legislature that we would say is a good thing?
Well, one of the things that I'm working on right now is the making Kendras Law permanent, and
Okay,
I'm
now
not sure if you know what
explain,
Kendras Law
yeah.
is. Kendras Law was put into place about 10 years ago, and people may remember Kendra Webdale. She was a beautiful young woman from Fredonia. Her parents still live there, and she was living and working in New York City. Unfortunately, a seriously mentally ill man who had a history of violence came up behind her on a subway platform and pushed her in front of a train, and she was killed. And her parents got very active and involved in trying to change the laws so that seriously mentally ill people who are violent are able to receive the treatment that they need. And so we put Kendras Law in place 10 years ago, but for whatever reason the legislature keeps putting in this 5-year sunset. And what I mean by a sunset is that the law expires in 5 years and then you have to renew it if you want to continue it. So we did it for 5 years and then we did it for 5 years again, and now it's up for renewal. And I've been working very closely with Kendra's family to try to make it permanent because all these studies show how well it works. And you know, Reed, there's about 15,000 mentally ill people in our county jails across the state right now because there's nowhere else for them to go, there's nowhere else for them to be, and that costs the taxpayers money. So this not only saves taxpayer money, but it's also better for the quality of life for the people who have mental illness. And the studies just are through the roof in showing that this is really important. We've had editorials from all over the state newspapers that support this, and so we'll be working on this. There is kind of a pushback against making it permanent, again, mostly out of New York City, but we're going to work very hard to see if we can get that done.
When you do mention the fact that they have, well, actually, they disassembled the mental health care system in New York State at one point, closing Gwinnett, among other places.
Exactly.
And saying, well, everybody said, well, what's going to happen to people who are mentally ill? What are we going to do with them? Well, they said, well, it'll work out. It hasn't. And in the meantime, most of them wind up in jail.
Exactly,
that's the care for mentally ill people. They obviously commit a crime at some point, they go to jail for life.
Right, and you know, our jails are not equipped to deal with mentally ill people. They
Right.
don't have the expertise or the resources.
Right. It's just strictly custodial. They just go to jail and keep them there.
And it's costly.
Well, so, you know, $80 a day now, but that's pretty good compared to $600 a day in a mental health institute, in a mental hospital.
Well, you know, it is, but
That's
you
how
know,
they figured. I mean, it obviously doesn't work.
And the way that the law works is that if people, and again, they have to be violent, they have to have some kind of history of violence, but if they, or some kind of criminal behavior, but if they, you know, get their treatment, take their medications, and are able to live in the community, then they can, under Kendras Law. However, they would have to be committed if they don't follow the rules and
good.
follow the treatment.
Caller, hold on a second. I have one more question. New Shawn, you've been working on his case, speaking of
That's
mentally
right.
ill, crazy people.
That's right.
How's that coming now?
What's coming, and you know, I have a
Shawn,
bill that would actually make it criminal
Uh-huh.
if someone purposefully, knowingly spreads the HIV virus, which is exactly what this character did.
New Shawn Williams, wasn't it?
Yes, New Shawn Williams.
And he
is his
lived
name.
right here in Chautauqua County, and he infected lots of people. We don't know yet how many.
He victimized many people, mostly young girls. One girl was as young as 13 years old. We've had 2 babies born with HIV because of his behavior. And he really, you know, now he's saying he's sorry now that he's getting out of prison. His sentence is up. But during prison, he acted out continuously. He threw his urine at someone. He told people that he wanted to infect more young women with HIV. So it sounds a little bit hollow now that he may be and continue to be held under the civil confinement law, and he doesn't want to do that. So he's now changing his tune. There's a law we put into place in New York State a couple of years ago. It's called civil confinement, and it's for sexual predators who are proven to be a continued danger to society, and they are not fit to be released. And I believe that New Shawn Williams fits that profile because of his behavior. He's shown a depraved indifference for human life. He knew that he had HIV, and you remember Dr. Burke took a very courageous stand back then because
Yeah, he released his name.
he released his name so that he could notify the public that this guy was out there and he was victimizing
He was
people.
a predator. He was killing people intentionally, knowing it,
Exactly.
trying to. Couple of calls, well, then we'll be back. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Reed. How are you?